ready to go ahead and start off our positivity talk on that note after the follow. So thank you all so much for coming out for these. It's something I'm really, really passionate about, and something this one is actually a couple weeks in the making. I didn't get to do one last week, and I'll talk about that here in just a second of the reason why. But I'm just super appreciative of you all coming out, supporting this kind of initiative and supporting this idea of being able to bring positivity to Twitch, to the internet, to our community, to each and every other person that's here, and that's awesome. Like, that's great. My boy Medic now hosting the stream. Well, thank you, Medic. I really do appreciate that. That's awesome. Guys, if you don't know who Medic is, you definitely should check him out. So he's an awesome guy. I still have ads to watch. Yes, Jay, you have so many ads. JWB, thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So the reason for these talks, for these positivity talks, is to be able to basically bring positivity to at least one person. I want to talk about what we can do as individuals, as people on Twitch, and as gamers, to be able to bring positivity to other people, to other communities, to anywhere that we go. And really, honestly, if you guys share this, if you guys talk about it, if you take something from it, if even one person does that, right? And for you, I hope that it's you, and I am talking to all of you. I hope that it's each one of you. You guys take this, and if I can make a positive impact on one person's life, then these talks are completely worth it, right? These talks are 100% making a difference in the world. And so you can find me if you're watching this rather on a highlight reel on Twitch or on YouTube or on any other social media site or anything else that someone may have shared with you. You can come and be part of these talks. We talk on these on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on this channel. My name is Rufio, Rufioo. And then 3 H's, kind of like Rufio. So come on over on Twitch with us and talk about it. I love being able to hear your everybody's perspective, everybody's thoughts, everybody's ideas whenever it comes to positivity and how we can make Twitch and make everywhere else just a better place. So it's because you know my mobile Jay, you get more ads. I don't understand why some people are so negative. Yeah, well, I get it, right? Like, I mean, I understand it, and that's their right as a human being to be able to choose that, right, Pug? It stinks, but I want to be able to give a different perspective on that because some people do that. Bob Sage Teddy, I hope I said that right. Bob, thank you so much for the follow. I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming on over. Today's talk, Borns, thank you as well. Guys, welcome to Neverland. Thank you for being able to help grow the community and make it such a much more awesome place. So today's talk is talking about sympathy and empathy. And the reason why originally I held off on it last week is because it is really, really relevant right now, right? So with everything that happened in Virginia, that has been all over the news and everything else, I wanted to wait a little bit so that people could form their own opinions, form their own thoughts, and just kind of see how things shape up. I don't want to address something whenever it's so emotionally charged from a lot of different ends. I'm more than happy to give my opinion on that, but I'll do that after the Twitch talk. But what I think and what I know would be able to happen is if people would use these two things, so sympathy and empathy, and have conversations around issues that are happening, I think it would go a long way in preventing things like this to happen in the future, right? Like things that happened in Charlottesville. So, being able to better understand, someone and be able to put yourself in their shoes. So empathy, just so that everybody knows where, like these two words, because a lot of people do kind of get a little bit confused on these two. Clark, thank you for those biddies, dude. Thank you for helping support kids. Thank you for helping support kids in need. You rock, dude, and welcome. So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of one another, right? So that's being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and it's great. It's an amazing thing. And sympathy is kind of like the like the first initial reaction, right? That's the feelings of pity and sorrow for someone else's misfortune. So like an understanding between people, or like a common feeling, like my deepest sympathies, right? You know, kind of goes along with that. And so we're going to take a look at these two, and we're actually going to start off with all these burgers.
Buffalo burgers, bison burgers, lamb burgers, goat burgers, salmon burgers, cotton candy burgers, burgers upon burgers upon burgers. Whoa. Sympathy and empathy burgers,
for sure. But did you hear whenever it was burgers upon baggers? That was different. I've never heard that one. But thank you so much for the biddy shout out. I really do appreciate it, man. Thank you for grinding those bits. Hello, Clark. So we're going to take a look at sympathy, basically because this is something that anybody can do, right? This is something that you can give to another person, regardless if you've been through their situation. Now, empathy is a little bit different, because if you specifically haven't been through what they're being through, it is very difficult to be able to empathize with someone through that situation. And sympathy is something that you can give, that you can freely give, and it's a great gift to be able to give. So we'll talk about sympathy. Thank you, Pug. I appreciate that compliment. So sympathy. So why does this help? There's a saying that's pretty popular, is you find out who your friends are when things get tough, right? There's even like a song, there's a country song about it. And sympathy is really showing someone that you care for something that happened, right? So there's something negative that happened in their life that's either like some common uses of this are like a death in the family, or maybe someone's sick or ill, or there's just like a rough situation, dealing with something, very, very troubling. Like if you're only there for someone when life is good, you'll never be there when it's great, right? AZ, I'm actually going to address that comment for sure, because yes, exactly. You are correct. 100% correct. So like with sympathy, with that, like you're looking at this from like a situational aspect, right? Like again, if you're only there for someone when life is good, you'll never be there when it's great, because life, how deep you can love somebody, and how and being there during tough times, that's going to build a foundation with the individual, that is going to give you a more meaningful relationship. Okay, so and that's going to be able to have it to where through those struggles and afterwards, after that, right, their life is going, a lot of these times too, with sympathy, with things like death or rough situation, or sometimes things that are very troubling, these could be life-altering situations. I mean, these very well could be. And if you can't empathize with that, the least that you can do is give sympathy. And then through that, after their life has been completely altered, you were part of that growing process. And now with you having that relationship with them, it has grown deeper and more solid, and you both have a better appreciation of where you're at now. So, and so AZ, you can, please, guys, for everybody that's in chat, if you guys have thoughts or things that you want to bring up, absolutely. If there's something that is relevant to what I'm talking about immediately, like I'll address it right there. But like with empathy, I'm going to go over sympathy first and then empathy a little bit later, AZ. But yeah, share your thoughts, talk about, showing sympathy and anything else. If you guys have, examples of it, or what you like about it, or how it makes you feel, or if you think that it's stupid, any way, this is an open forum. So I want you guys to express however you feel about anything that we talk about in these positivity talks, because that's what it's about. It's about having conversations and being able to make a place better. And we can't make a place better if we don't have a conversation around it. So, oftentimes with sympathy, people stray away from doing anything, not because they don't care, but because they have the phrase like, I'm not good at that stuff, or I don't really know what to do for them, is often used, right? Like, I don't know what to do, so I'm probably just gonna kind of like hang back, right? And that's your right to do that, but I'm gonna go ahead and push back a little bit on that and say that shouldn't stop you from expressing sympathy if you think the individual would want it. Okay? So if you think the individual would want that sympathy, I know right now there is a friend of mine that had a loss in his family, and I know for a fact that he wanted alone time, that he wanted to be able to work things out on his work things out through his mind, and go through that. And so it's being able to go through that. You need to give them that space. So if you do that, be sure to know that from that person's perspective. AZ, literally, you couldn't have timed that. You couldn't have timed that any better. AZ, like your statement right there. And for those of you who are watching this on Twitch, afterwards, keep in mind that people mourn in different ways. Telling someone they should or should not mourn their way is not showing sympathy. That is correct, because you want to go ahead and do that for the other person, because what you're giving with sympathy and empathy, you are giving a gift. You are giving love. But if you're telling someone, you're being judgmental, right? Like that's something that's like, hey, you should do this. But like giving sympathy, if the other person is going to want that, then the phrase "I'm not good at that stuff" or "I don't really know what to do for them," like I would push back a little bit on that, right? Because honestly, you know what most people want? Just the feeling of being cared for. Like that's what they want. Like Pug, what you just said in there. I like to be positive when my friends are frustrated or annoyed at something. I try to help them feel better about it in a brighter way. Oh, hey, you have 500. Oh, thanks, Corey. Awesome. And welcome, buddy. Cool. I just broke 500 followers. Neat. Thanks, guys. That's awesome. I would hope that I make 500 people's lives better. That's my better hope. 500 followers is great. I want to change 500 lives. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm about. And so, the feeling of being cared for, even if it's just a quick expression like, "I'm here for you. What do you need?" Or I mean, it can even be something to where it's like, "I'm sorry to hear that." Like F cancer, right? I've seen a ton of those different sayings on there, like, like F cancer, right? Like, however that is, like some people have just those differing ways, and sometimes like for me, if people I am a social person. I love being around people. I love being able to talk to people. I want to be there for others. But what's odd is that if I have a loss, if I have something that is incredibly frustrating, if I have something that isn't going well or is a big life change, I need to have time by myself. If people constantly ask me what's wrong or how can I help or anything like that, it actually annoys me. So being able to know your audience is definitely big. But if people tell me jokes along the way, don't even bring it up and just say something that says like F cancer, right? Like after I heard what happened to my cousin, Teague, like I saw that shirt a little bit afterwards and I was like, yes, absolutely. So, it's like, yes, and AZ, that's a good point too. So whenever you talk about this, like just be yourself and you can't really go wrong. But one thing to keep in mind though is the individual as extreme emotions needed to be handled with extreme care, right? Like always keeping the individual in mind, knowing there are an extreme amount of grace on both sides. Like this ultimately will net positive in the long run as it deepens relationships, strengthens friendships, and builds appreciation for each other. So like, whenever there's extreme things that happen, like AZ, like one thing that you put in here is saying things like you need to get over this or aren't you over this already is incredibly hurtful. That's a valid point, right? Like again, whenever you're doing these sympathy things, you have to asking questions and really honestly just asking a question, how can I help? Or like, I'm sorry to hear this, or what do you need? Or just saying it off the comment joke. And Pug, you bring up a great one as well right there. When someone has a mental issue, like not being able to, that someone can't hear or see it, right? Like trying to be able to have those conversations. And again, that's a little bit more on the empathy side because some of those some of those are a little bit different, but yeah, like to your point exactly, like that's a very good point that you bring up, is that being able to be there and helpful to people who have those issues and who maybe are going through those things, or even like right now one of my cousins one of my aunts and uncles has a child who has a hearing impairment, and then another one has a learning disability. And it's not that I'm showing like sympathy, but I'm trying to empathize. I'm trying to empathize and understand their situation by saying, hey, how can I be the best cousin to them, and be the best nephew to you, to help out when your family comes over and hangs out, to make sure that we're treating them like the individuals like they need to be treated, like not doing something to where, believe it or not, like handicapped individuals, you know what's the most common, not the most common, but is something that I have heard very frequently from them, from different panels that I've attended, and from different individuals as well, is that whenever someone sees them, they actually speak louder, as if somehow them being in a wheelchair makes them unable to hear, right? Like, what are you doing? Like, try and put yourself in their shoes. It's not like, you need to think of the person and treat the individual as the individual. So, give that person something that you think that is what they need. And if you don't know, ask. Now, with sympathy, whenever that happens, something bad had to happen to it, right? So without bad things, we wouldn't have gratitude. Like bad things happen in this world. Like it's inevitable. If someone tries to tell you like, hey, by the way, you're always gonna be positive, it's always gonna be easy, there's not gonna be anything bad that happens to you, wrong. Liar, pants on fire, right? So without bad things, though, we wouldn't have gratitude, which is hugely important in this life, and we can talk about that later. But through trials and tribulations, we earn empathy for others. It's something that has a cost to it, yet we oftentimes don't use what we've purchased. Okay, that's something that I want to reemphasize. Empathy, right? So having bad things and you can give someone sympathy. Empathy, right? Through trials and tribulations, we earn empathies for others. It's something that has a cost to it, right? We had to go through this. There was a cost associated to it, yet we oftentimes don't use what we've already purchased. And what we've already purchased is valuable to the next person that's in line. So that's kind of my transition over to empathy. But before I get to that, AZ Rockside says, if someone is sharing their grief, telling them it is upsetting you and making a big deal about it is not helpful. If you need to remove yourself from the situation, do that without calling attention to yourself. Yeah. So another thing too, always to keep in mind whenever AZ with that, and I think one of the big point that you're talking about right there is it's not about you, right? It's about the person that's going through something, right? Like you're there to support them. That's what sympathy and empathy is. You're giving a gift to be able to support someone. That's like to be an others focused mentality. So empathy. So fun, like I don't know if anybody nerds out over like body stuff or nerds out about like kind of crazy facts on what happens whenever you're either positive or they have these different emotions. But for those of you who are like me, so the pleasure, and this one I'm actually gonna quote. So this is a little bit of doctor speech right here. So the pleasure centers of the brain light up when we are empathetically heard and understood. It reduces stress and fosters resilience, trust, healing, personal growth, creativity, learning, and nourishing connection. Empathy also transforms conflict and supports sustainable collaborative action and positive social change. Whenever I read that the first time, I was like, that is way more of a loaded sentence than I think I've ever said in my entire life. So again, the pleasure centers of the brain light up when we are empathetically heard and understood. Okay, both of those. Empathetically heard and understood. It reduces stress and fosters resilience, trust, healing, personal growth, creativity, learning, and nourishing connection. Empathy also transforms conflict and supports sustainable collaborative action and positive social change. Like that's crazy to me. Think of all those different benefits and think how amazing that is, right? Like that's incredible. That is incredible how much of a positive impact that empathy can have on the world, right? Like you're nourishing connection and you're fostering how many of those great words? Resilience, right? Being able to go through something that's very hard. Trust. Like trust is huge. Trust is huge in life. It's something that you need to be able to give and receive constantly. Healing, personal growth, nourishing connection, learning, creativity, like all these things are amazing. Think about how this affects others. Think like whenever you're going through these different situations, like think about how it affects others, how they will see it, read it, feel it, hear it whenever you're doing communication, whenever you're talking with somebody. Like there is neuroscience truth to the adage, walk a mile in my shoes, right? Like that's what basically that's saying, which leads us kind of back to like the brain's pleasure center, reward center, like empathy. So how does this kind of happen? So empathy triggers dopamine, right? So this happens like dopamine and serotonin. So those are neurochemicals associated with the reward center's conjoined twin, the brain's emotion center. So whenever this thing happens, you're helping someone else, but also in your own brain, these neurochemicals are going off, and it's actually rewarding to yourself. So by doing this and putting yourself in other people's shoes, you're actually rewarding yourself at the same time. Empathy is a true win-win scenario, people. Like you, again, like I said earlier, it's something that has a cost to it. Use what you purchased. It helps out everybody. David Cameron. So this is a quote from David Cameron from the book called The Look of Love. It says, if, as the scientific literature indicates, mere laughter stimulates the reward center, how much more stimulating would be the act of immersing yourself in the world of another? What? Wow. Like if laughter triggers the exact same thing, right? Of what's going on, how much more stimulating would the act of immersing yourself in the world of another be? Oh man, that's amazing. Like that is incredible. That's an incredible feeling. AZ also points out on here, and whoa, I just talked about your first point right there. AZ, it looks like you have a lot to contribute to this, and I'm glad that we're kind of all on the same, seems like we're on the same page for a lot of these. So, I cannot emphasize this enough. Make sure you truly can empathize before you tell someone, I know how you feel. Yeah. Like sometimes, and one thing too, so one thing to note on this, right? Whenever someone says that, that's where grace needs to come into play, because the people who say those things, right, a lot of the times we want to Shadow, thank you for the bits, man. Holy crap, BD. That's amazing. That's a lot of biddies, man. Thank you for that. Be sure to show grace in this, because whenever someone says, I know how you feel, they a lot of the times are doing their best to be able to try and empathize and sympathize with you. And the best way that a lot of times people know how to do that is by talking about their own situation. It's not that they're trying to be angry or mean or malicious or anything like that, but one thing that you can do, that you can take positive apps on, is one, don't say like, I know how you feel if you haven't been through it. But also two, whenever someone says that to you, realize that they are that most of the time, right? Most of the time they are just trying to connect with you. Now, some people, unfortunately, like they have that me-centric mentality and they just can't get it through their head that the situation's not about them. But I would rather, at least for me personally, I would rather assume best intent in the person who's doing this, because I know they're just trying to help me out and they're just trying to be there for me. If they're saying, yeah, man, I know how you feel whenever your cousin is going through these treatments and having to go through, every 2 hours having to have this happen and, having to go through scans and everything. I once had a old friend that used to do that. I think, they're just trying to get with you. So I completely get you on that one, AZ. And that's a good point to bring up for everybody. Don't do that unless you know it, but also be sure to give grace for those who are trying, are trying, right? Because sometimes people are just like, yeah, that sucks. And they're just trying. So, but you do bring up is, I cannot begin to understand what you're going through, but I'm more than willing to be there for you. That is a great line, guys. You can take that exactly from AC that's in there. I can't begin to understand what you're going through, but I'm more than willing to be there for you. Right? Like that's stating like, I don't know. And honestly, being vulnerable, that's a whole nother subject of vulnerability, of positivity, because whenever you're vulnerable with somebody, that you gain trust, you gain deeper relationships, you're gonna have a better appreciation for the person and the person for you. So that's a good point to bring up, AZ. Thank you for those again. And Caitlin. So again, empathy, it's the proactive approach to conflict resolution, right? The strength of empathy and think about this. So a lot of people right now, they're talking about bullying or, I know that's been kind of a big topic as well. The strength of empathy and the weakness of bullying are literally mutually exclusive actions. If you have empathy, have that. Practice empathy. Gotta head out, man. Keep doing what you're doing. Of course, AZ. Thank you so much for your contributions, man. I really do appreciate it. By giving empathy, the weakness of bullying, it's gonna be taken out. If you have empathy towards somebody, you're not gonna sit there and bully them. And guys, thank you so much for saying bye to everybody whenever they leave. That's really kind of you guys. That's awesome. One of the things that I also want to bring up is, with empathy and sympathy, these are very emotional things, right? Sometimes people just aren't emotional people, and sometimes it just takes work, right? Here's a fun fact for you. Hashtag no cyberbullies allowed, right? Here's a fun fact for you. IQ, right? So your intelligence quotient. IQ, at least from the studies that have been done so far, right? A lot of studies have pointed to the fact that by the time you are 7 years old, the overwhelming majority of your IQ is already set. Now, I'm not saying that you should stop learning after age 7. However, what your IQ is going to go, it's only going to vary by a few points after that point, by 10 to 20%. So, it's crazy. So by the time you're 7-year-olds, that's already set up. I think it's between 80 to 90% right now. A lot of people argue between those two percentages, but it basically between 80 to 90%, right? Your EQ, your emotional quotient at 7 years old is only set at 10% at that age. You have only set your EQ by 10%, meaning that after age 7, you have 90% growth to go throughout your life. This is the part where people can grow the most, is through their EQ. Empathy is a great way to improve and increase your EQ, your emotional quotient. And this is exactly what, to be honest, what I talked about earlier as far as my job, that's what my job is. My job is to be able to have because of me studying and me being able to have a higher EQ and be able to be able to think about others is literally the reason why I'm getting paid. That's you need to go in there and go into the fact that, and realizing that as we grow as individuals, the only way that we grow is by making mistakes, by being around, by having interaction and being able to consistently grow as just a human being, right? Whenever something hard comes up or whenever an interaction with another human being is going to come up, because, sorry, you're not the only person on Earth. There's over 7.5 billion people. You're bound to run into one of them. And not only that, you're bound to be different than them because nobody's the same. And whenever that happens, if you don't have an EQ, you're going to make you're going to have a negative effect on someone else. And for you to grow in your EQ, you're going to make huge strides in this world. The people who are the most successful and the people who have changed the world, right, are the people with the highest EQs. I mean, name anybody who has made huge contributions to the world. Name me one of them that does not have a large EQ. Are you kidding me? It's incredible. I'm sure there's probably some out there. So I don't want to sit there and say that's completely impossible. But you get what I'm trying to say. All these people who have made significant contributions in their field of work, in their field of research, in their field of study, just in their lives have high EQ. And that's going to be a whole nother talk, will be emotional quotient. But yeah, loaded question, but yes, I heard you. Yeah, for sure, Shadow. But that's something that's amazing. And you need to constantly be working on that, right? So the emotional strengths of kindness, generosity, forgiveness, and compassion are learned, right? The way that we have those, right? We have them, but how we go about doing that, the action that we put in there, are learned by feeling them. Empathy is giving a gift for free out of love from a debt already paid, like I talked about earlier. Giving a gift for free out of love from a debt that has already been paid. You can give the gift of feeling connected, presence, openness, deeper intimacy, deeper caring, more calm and relaxed, happiness, acceptance, inclusion, you can have someone feel heard, feel seen, feel power. And believe it or not, you're not giving that to the person that's struggling. You're giving it to yourself too. Like, you're literally getting a buy one, get one of the heart, people. Of the heart. Cool Clum Clam 1. Thank you for the follow. You put yourself in my shoes. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you can feel that too. Look at the bitty splash. The emotional strengths of that is amazing. Like, I suggest that, okay, so here, this is where you guys can feel free to argue against me, right? Well, you can do that the entire time, but I'm going to go ahead and give you an opinion of mine. I suggest that everyone has the ability to be empathetic, okay? I suggest that everyone has the ability to be empathetic. Some people simply lack the techniques that facilitate an empathetic encounter, and they lack an ability to recognize when to use their empathetic skills and when to use their fix-it skills, right? Like I think everybody has the ability to do that. Now, you could argue, individuals with mental handicaps to be able to have that, but that part is arguable. However, my suggestion is that everybody has the ability to be empathetic, right? Some people just simply lack the techniques. Like, for me, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, for me, being a male, whenever I see my wife struggling with something, I immediately have the thought, and it's the first one that comes to my head, how can I fix it? Because, whenever I see my wife going through something, I'm like, I'm make it better. Like, I'm gonna fix it. I want to make sure, like, I don't know if anybody else has this feeling whenever they see, and again, this transcends sex and gender, but, whenever you see someone crying, what's your immediate thought? Right? Like, think about someone who you love, someone who you have a relationship with, someone who you care for. Whenever you see them crying, what's your immediate reaction? Whether that's kids, wives, friends, family members, all that in there, a lot of the times you want to try and fix it. And sometimes, like Shadow would just put in chat, my wife, thank God, has told me, and it took me forever to learn, don't try to fix it, just listen. Okay? What's funny is that I was telling my wife about this talk and kind of going through it and going through what I was going to talk about, and she goes, oh yeah, it's like Modern Family. And apparently there's an episode of Modern Family that talks about where Phil Dunphy, he goes to, I guess, this hair salon place, and he goes there for an entire, like, this spa treatment. I don't know how this happened. Of course it would happen on Modern Family. But he would go there, and then they would literally, like, all these women just sat there and talked with him about how he's trying to figure out how to be there for his wife and be there for his family. And they're like, she doesn't want you to fix it. She just wants you to listen. Most of the time, that's all that she wants. And you just got to be able to learn how to be able to be there to either empathize with her or to be able to fix it. Like, ask the question, but don't just automatically go there, right? So, and just saying, like, man, kind of like what AZ's talking about. I have no idea what that's like, but I'm here for you. Like, I'm here to support you. Right? So here she is struggling with something, is overwhelmed and just can't take it anymore. Yeah. Like you just want to fix it, right? And so being there for somebody, you need to be there and just say, like, hey, what are you feeling? Like, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think that you're going to go about it? And if they're not like, hey, can you help me? Right? A lot of the times people want to help and try and fix, and that's great. That's because people care. And again, that's where grace comes in if someone gives you this. But, like, try and be there and try and understand the person rather than just, like, jumping in and fixing it, right? Because sometimes people don't want to fix. They just want to be heard. Just like for all the end of the talks, I want to leave you all with things that you can do to be able to further these, right? And again, empathy and sympathy, I could go on literally for days. I've already actually done a little bit longer of a talk than what I normally do, simply because this is empathy and sympathy are huge in positivity, and this is kind of like the tip of the iceberg on it. But I want to leave you all with some actions that you can do to be able to exercise these, right? So whenever a situation arises, ask some of these questions, along with being open to being vulnerable and avoid like a right and wrong encounter while keep it like a level playing field. Like no one is better, no one is worse than the other, and seeking to understand the other person as the important person of this of the transaction. If you always try and make sure that the other person is coming through this happy, trust me, you're going to come out with more wins than losses in life. So here's some questions to start asking, like whenever these things are going on. What was his or her perception of the occurrence, right? Like how do they view what happened? When this situation happened, how do they see it, right? Just ask them, what's your perception? I'd like to hear about that. What was troubling about this occurrence? So not only how did they see it, but what was the thing that kind of hit them, right? Like that's asking about emotions, and that's asking them how they feel. Again, not judging them. That's asking and seeking to understand, right? What were the emotions that he or she felt at the time of the occurrence? What are you going through? Like, are you angry, sad, happy, glad? What is it? What emotion are you feeling? Alone, betrayed, alone, and well, that was crazy. I just said alone. That was a lot of numbers too. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. So what emotions are being expressed in this exact moment? Start trying to have that feeler, right? Like if these people are, sitting here kind of doing one of these, like the, crossed arms, gonna go ahead and just lean back, not really talk to you, maybe looking around, maybe, playing on their phone, maybe doing something like, are they engaged? Are they disengaged? Are they excited? Are they hunched over? It's, what are they doing? Try and be able to judge their body, like not judge, but pick up on those little body language and all those things that, basically like 80% of the communication is nonverbal. Start picking up on those. And just ask them how they're feeling, like right now, like as you're talking to them. If they're annoyed, like if someone said, "Hey, by the way, what's wrong?" and I'm like, "Oh, nothing." They're like, "Are you, like, am I being too like cautious? Like, what's going on?" And I just say, "No, it's just, I'll work through it. It's not a big deal." So, and we'll just go from there, man. It's no biggie, right? And I would really appreciate that if someone came up to me if I'm trying to be able to work something out. So, what does he or she need from you, right? That literally you are asking how you can be empathetic. You are. And who's going to know that better than the person who you're trying to be sympathetic or empathetic with? Right? Like, I don't understand why this question isn't asked more. You're just asking a question. And sometimes people may say, "Hey, I don't need anything," and maybe they do. And you can kind of judge, and you can kind of think that through if you really truly feel that way. But why not ask the question, right? That shouldn't stop you from asking the question. Start by taking time, so asking these questions. So perception of the occurrence, what's troubling, what emotions are you feeling then? What emotions are you feeling now? Have you worked out through? What have you worked through? What do you need from me? A great way to start this is by taking time by yourself to practice using these skills on yourself. Your ability to understand your own emotions will directly affect your ability to empathize with others, right? Like if you can start exploring your own feelings, if you're not understanding, like, man, I'm angry right now in this situation, here are the reasons why, or man, like I'm so confused right now and I don't get why this thing happened, or maybe it's, man, like that felt really good whenever this person did this for me. Do that. Like whenever you're going through and you're feeling those things, that's going to help you understand whenever someone else is. And not only that, you can use that in every way, shape, and form. So, you all are amazing people. And we honestly, I'm being straight up honest about this for everybody that's in here. We could not be lucky to have each and every one of you, each and every one of us together here as a community, right? We've all had struggles, and after going through a fire, right? After going through the fire of life and being molded into the person you are today, you have the opportunity to empathize with someone else who's going through that currently. My hope is that you all follow Gandhi's saying, and be the change that you want to see in the world when that happens. I hope so. It's your choice, right? Like, you're gonna know what's best for every single situation. You're gonna learn from your mistakes, and you're gonna improve, and that's just the way of life. But Bunny and Apple, thank you for the follow. But honestly, we need each other in this world, or we'll never make it out alive. I mean that's just the fact. That's just the fact. And that, my friends, is your positivity talk on sympathy and empathy. I love you to death. And I'm going to catch back up on chat here